Hey there guys, this is Obsidian Chill. Got another video for today. Now specifically in this video we'll be looking at the Pied Piper's Flute artifact and its interaction with Rage Berserk supercharge. But before I do that, I need to show you guys some interactions with Berserk that you probably aren't aware of or may not be completely aware of. So when you think of Berserk, you think of the normal, like I pop it, go into my rotation, and then each tick of damage that I deal, percentage of that gets dealt back again. That's what you typically think of when you think of Berserk in terms of that rotation like that. But there's more interactions with Berserk that are happening on the background that you may not be completely aware of. So let's kind of break down those here. So I'm going to pop Robot Sidekick and then pop Berserk. And you can see I'm not damaging the target, Robot Sidekick is, but Robot Sidekick's damage as a pet artifact, or not even an artifact, just as a pet damage, it's counting towards Berserk's damage. Now if I take a look at as an artifact pet, so it doesn't matter, Quislet Grim. Quislet's a little bit easier because it uses Refractor Beam each time I use Berserk, so it's going to get the extra damage from that. So now if I have Quislet out, same thing, I use Berserk. And that Quislet damage is being dealt back. So we got pet damage counting towards Berserk. We've got artifact damage counting towards Berserk. Next one is going to be the turret damage. So I'm using Freeze Turret. You could use or like whatever, Freeze Drone, Lantern Seahorse, doesn't matter. So we'll get in combat again. We're going to pop the turret and then Berserk. And as you can see, all the turret damage is also counting towards Berserk. I Quislet out at the same time. We can take that off just so it's not as messy, but you got the concept there. So the reason why you'd prefer using a turret damage counting towards that damage is because if I use an actual like Seahorse, Freeze Drone, whatever, like a pet one, it lasts for 60 seconds and deals that damage over 60 seconds. Where if you're looking at turret damage, it does all its damage in 10 seconds. So you get much more damage return with this rather than using any other trinket because the damage is going to be over 10 seconds. Plus Berserk you can be using on AoE anyway. So we've established that the pet damage counts, artifact damage counts. We've established the trinket pet damage counts. Now, let's pop the ally damage. So we're going to summon Batman and Laughs, pop Berserk. And the same thing. You can see the ally damage is also counting towards Berserk. So it's all these interactions that you aren't completely aware of that has the potential to increase your Berserk damage by like tenfold, because you can use, like, so you've got Robot Sidekick or any kind of pet damage. Well, I mean, in this case it's only Robot Sidekick because it's not like you can run like Crystal Fury or anything like that as Rage. You've got any of your artifact pet damage, so it's like Quislet, Grim, anything else. Once again, no other choices in terms of that, and then you've got any of your allies counting. So the reason why I've got Batman Laughs is because when I show those, when I do the partial testing, I don't want his cards to interfere with that at all. So normally I'd run Batman Laughs as like the card damage, but in the purpose of this testing, I don't want to do that because it's going to throw off because I can't control one. I'm going to get that might buff one. But same thing, I can use any of this ally damage that's also going to count towards Berserk as well as the pet trinkets. So it's something that those interactions may not be completely aware of to the community as an FYI. Now, you may be thinking, well, that's not fair. I mean, that's no other supercharge works like that. So this comes back to two times. So when Berserk was adjusted primarily in the past by Batuba, it was mentioned on the forums that pet damage counts and it can't be changed because DC didn't have the tech at the time for that. That may still be around. I don't know if they've had the new tech to adjust this or not. And then the second time it came up is when allies came out and the devs were adjusting it. Before you had like ally damage counting for like Eye of the Gemini and Berserk at the same time. So it was basically, well, we can adjust so ally damage doesn't count for Eye of the Gemini, which was completely broken. And then but it still had to stay for Berserk. So it's one of those things where it's a very unique interaction, having everything counting towards berserk damage, pet damage, trinket damage, ally damage, everything. So any kind of damage proc that you get counts towards berserk. So now taking a look at the flute and its interaction. So if you want to wear the flute, so upon using supercharge, you have a 70, 20, and 10% chance to deal 15, 30, or 45%. And the way that works is that I'm basically actually going to change our loadout around. We're going to put Mangle on here. Actually, we'll drop this. Let's put Lacerate, Neovenom, and Mangle. So the way Flute works is that you have to have a damage proc. So the reason why that's important to know is because if you use a supercharge like Neovenom, Circuit Breaker, Rampage, Infuriate, any kind of supercharge that doesn't actually deal damage, it's not going to count. So for example, I've got Flute on. We're going to pop Neovenom. So we'll just get in combat, whatever. Pop Neovenom, go into a rotation. You know, and you see not getting any of the rat procs because Neovenom itself doesn't actually deal damage. So now in the same case, if I do this with Mangle, so still have Flute attached, we've got our power procs, and then whatever going to Mangle. Now you see all the rats start to proc for Flute. And if you weren't aware, that's what the animation for Pied Pipers looks like. It's just a bunch of rats. So now if I deal, if we go into Berserk here. So the reason why this is unique for Berserk is because, you know, if I pop Berserk itself, it does nothing. So like Berserk itself doesn't do any damage. It enhances your own damage. But because it has that damage proc, when you deal your damage, it deals that extra tick. It technically counts towards dealing damage. So once again, I'll pop Berserk, and then we'll just go into our rotation here. And as you see, I'm getting the Pied Piper Flutes to proc, because it's going to proc on each one of the additional, or has a chance to proc on each one of those additional hits of Berserk. So that's the unique interaction with Pied Piper's Flute and Berserk, is that even though Berserk doesn't deal any damage itself, the damage you deal gets dealt back, and then that counts as a damage proc. So how this actually looks in terms of parsers, that's what I'm going to show you here. So what I'm going to follow up is we're going to do a baseline test where it's basically just the regular rage rotation. Then I'm going to do the rage rotation just with Berserk so you can see that difference. Then I'll use the damage rotation with all like everything else, like the trinkets, the turrets, everything else. So you can see that, allies. And then we'll do with the flute damage as well. So kind of showing the progression in terms of how much extra damage you're getting each time. And I should mention as well, just as an FYI for like if you're talking about like art swapping. So if we do this here, I just need to get, please let me get out of combat. Please and thank you. Can we get out of combat, please? There we go. Okay. So as you know, or may not know, is a lot of the artifacts in terms of how they work with their swap is that if you can swap it in, say like a buff troll is a good example of this. You basically, I can swap Tetra in, hit a power, and get the might buff for 12 seconds, and then swap the artifact back out. Same thing with like Cog or like Amulet, same thing. I can, if I'm using like Amulet of Rao, I can pop it, get the extra debuff, swap it back out. Or Claw, I can pop the instant power with to trigger the Claw buff, and then basically then swap it out, and I still have the Claw buff for 12 seconds. So that's how the interactions work with artifacts. It's the same as for Flute. So if you want to tech swap in Flute, so for example, we'll just put Flute at the bottom here. And then it doesn't matter, we can pop whatever, we can swap with Philosopher's Stone, doesn't matter. So basically I've got, we'll take Flute off. Actually we'll show it with Flute on. This would be kind of easier to show it. So I got Flute on right now. I'm in my channel. Let's just take off Flute. Then we're going to pop Mangle. And you can see I don't have Flute on, but I'm getting all the Pied Piper procs. And you ask, why is that? It's because it works the same way. If I have Pied Piper's Flute on, hit a power, for the next 12 seconds, it's going to register if I use a supercharge. So basically, I can tack swap out Pied Piper's Flute for something else, for another artifact, if I want to do like Philosopher's Stone for like better supercharge, like better Supply Drop or whatever. As long as I hit a power, basically in the next 12 seconds, if I hit a power with Flute, it's going to basically search for supercharge usage. So if I don't use the supercharge, it's not going to proc, and I'm going to have to put it back on. But if I have it on, hit a power, I can take it off, and then I've got basically 12 seconds to use a supercharge until I have to reapply that buff again. So that's taking it kind of to the extra level, but just for it works just like there's numerous other artifacts that works about. It's just how artifacts work, and that's why art swapping is a thing. Same thing, I can swap in Dead Kick Scepter, use an orbital, swap it out, and still get the orbital assistance procs for up to the 30 seconds. So that's just how artifacts work. But just so you're aware of, that's how Flute works as well. It's basically going to, once you hit a power, basically Pied Piper's Flute searches for a supercharge usage. And then as long as you hit it within that time frame, it's still going to proc Flute just as you would as if you were having it equipped. So let's get into the spreadsheets and kind of get to the final summary here. Okay, so starting off for the baseline rotation for Rage, I didn't include Dervish in there. It's basically just from left to right. So I would clip Relentless Anger with Severe Punishment, do Outrage ×3, clip that with Lacerate. Once the cooldown popped for Relentless Anger, I would clip back into that, basically just kind of continue the rotation. It's not typically what I would use. I would use like Dervish in that case as well after Lacerate, but Dervish is it's leaving more room for unpredictability in terms of its crits. If I clip it a little bit early or get an extra tick of damage, it's going to throw off the parser. So it's basically it's easier to do for the purpose of this test. It didn't matter if it was Dervish or not, but it basically just allows me to establish basically what the Rage baseline rotation will be, and then I can subtract and add all the other damage after that. So we did 10 parsers, 30 seconds each. Average damage was, what's that, 3,230,695? Nothing crazy in terms of the crits. My might was 130,000, so like I don't have a nitro, don't have compound, don't have augment buffs, don't have buff troll, don't have supply drops, everything. Don't have DPS trinkets. My artifact setup's a little bit weird. I'm always including Gemini, and the other ones I'm just kind of including in what I would switch for. Because I didn't necessarily want transformation card, because you don't actually need transformation card in terms to make the rotation work, but then it's going to throw off all the crit bias. So I wanted to kind of keep things as low as I basically eliminate as many variables as I could. So we jump into the rotation with Berserk. So this exact same rotation, all I'm doing is just clipping Berserk with it as well. So that jumps up, same thing again, 10 parsers, 30 seconds each. Just didn't work with the combat log just because there was breaks, and with it being, Berserk's a little bit hard because it's a 12-second cooldown. So if I do like a 10-second parse, you're gonna have 2 parsers of 10 seconds, which will grow across Berserk. So that doesn't work. If I do 30 seconds, yes, like the second half of the parse is not going to be Berserk damage related at all, but then it just fits a lot easier, and I can't do after combat damage because I'm not going to be able to split it evenly. So 30 seconds is what you get. So it's 1 Berserk per parse. So that's it. And I should mention as well, on each test it's going to say 8 targets. That's just because the Eye of the Gemini proc hit the 3 sparring targets behind me in House of Legends. So all the damage, like 99.9% of the damage is on the 5 targets, and it's just 3 hits. That's it on the 3 sparring targets behind, which is just the Gemini proc. So that average damage jumped up to 4.6 mil, 21% crit, baseline rotation. I had 26.7% crit, so it's all fairly within like 5% of each other. So now jumping to the pet parse, what I did here was I did a control pet parse. So it's basically 359 CR, Robot Sidekick plus Quislet plus the tier 3 freeze turret plus the Batman Who Laughs, rank 10 ally damage, and no Berserk. So basically this is how much damage I'm going to get just by doing my pets. No rotation damage at all, just summoning my pets. with Quislet because the reason why I could pop Quislet is I used Neo Venom Boost as a supercharge. So Neo Venom Boost doesn't actually do any damage, but it'll still proc the Quislet Mega Beam. So that's what I did there. And then you'll see why I use that later. So this basically is now I'm doing the full rotation with Berserk with pets. So I jump all the way up to an average damage of 8 million. So you can already see the huge increase by using the pets in terms of what I showed before with all the pets counting, because just using the rotation of Berserk was 4.6 mil. And then once I throw in the pets, I'm jumping up to 8 mil. Not doing anything different, just running the pets, because all the ally and pet damage and artifact pet damage counts towards Berserk. You get all that extra damage. And the crits are about the same because I'm not using transformation card. That's not going to be inflated. That's like base crits. But because of all the hits, it's going to lower the crits. So it's basically you're not going to ever see 20% crits because there's so many hits of damage. Like each parse, like I averaged total hits. My average crit hits were probably like 530, 540, somewhere in that range. Same thing, 8 targets because the EOG proc hit the 3. So what this on the side is, so my total damage, these are the total damages from all the parsers, the 10 parsers at 30 seconds. I subtracted the pet damage. So then I could get the average damage of Berserk there. That's not what I'm talking about. So total damage minus the control pet parsers, minus the average baseline damage. Then we get the estimated Berserk damage. So basically, it's estimated because it's not going to be perfect. So basically, I'm taking all the damage I did, I'm taking away the pet damage, and I'm taking away the average damage from just the rotation itself, because then I can get an idea what actually the Berserk damage increase was, which is what it shows me here, which is about 3.1 mil. So just by adding in Berserk, because I can still do this same rotation without Berserk and just do all the pet damage. I can still do that rotation, summon all my pets just like I did before. But if I add Berserk into that same rotation, I'm getting an extra, 3.1 mil damage, which is, insane. Then the final test, I bring in the Pied Piper artifact. So same thing, 10 parsers at 30 seconds. My average damage goes up to 8.5 mil. Crits stay about the same. Crit was, oh, that's not that same. We could, guess I didn't actually calculate that. So we can do the average crits now. So it'll be 12.4%, 12.1. Which is probably going to be the exact same for this one. This one was 13.5, so it was 1% difference in crits. It's the same thing here. So this is the total damage of everything. Berserk, all the pets rotation, all the baseline rotation. That's the total damage, Pied Piper, everything. Then I'm subtracting my control pet parse from the previous one. Then I'm subtracting the average baseline rotation for for Rage, which I got here. Then I'm subtracting the estimated Berserk damage that I got from this last test, which leaves me with the Pied Piper damage, which averages out to about just under 600k damage, 577. So that means on top of everything I already did, just by swapping in Pied Piper or having that on my loadout for Berserk, I get a free 0.5 mil damage on top of that by doing nothing, just by having the Pied Piper artifact. And that's going to fluctuate. That's still going to fluctuate because you can see here based on the test. Sometimes it was 700k, sometimes it was like 900k for a million, sometimes 400k because of how the Pied Piper artifact works in terms of percentages. But you also have to take into account that, once again, like I said before, this is without augment buffs, without compound, without omega, without the cookie consumable, without supply drops, without a buff troll, without a claw buff, without transformation cards. So I mean, everything. Once you add in all that, this total damage goes through the roof. The pet damage stays about the same because that's based on your CR. So then, and basically everything else will go up. So you could be looking at a Pied Piper potential damage, up to 1 million, because that's going to be based on the hits. So the stronger Berserk does, because Pied Piper will proc off the damage of Berserk. So the higher the damage is that I'm doing, the higher the proc's potentially going to be off Pied Piper. So you have that basically just free damage that has like almost near limitless possibilities, because it's based totally on how much you're buffed and how much your Berserk's hitting for. And this is one Berserk. That's it. This is not like a full rotation or like a full rage or something like that. That is one Berserk. You get an extra with all the pets. But same thing. An ally cooldown is 90 seconds, and then the pet damage is 120 seconds. And Quislet damage, Quislet will do it each time I proc it, so that there's no cooldown on Quislet, and there's no cooldown on Robot Sidekick. So every 120 seconds, which is very viable, every 120 seconds or every 90 seconds if I'm using an ally, because I don't have to use like all the pets at the same time. I could just have like, Robot Sidekick, Quislet, and the Batman Who Laughs ally, or whichever ally you're going to use for damage. Or if you don't have the ally up, then you use a freeze turret. So each way, the point of this test and the point of this video is to show you that by adding in all these extra avenues to Berserk's damage, you put its potential through the roof. And it's a huge increase, like I said before. Like the artifact itself is giving you like 500k damage per Berserk, so it's 500k extra damage every one Berserk you do, and Berserk's a 12-second cooldown, and it's 5,000 supercharge. So I mean, with like that's before like running like Scrap the Soul Cloak, or running like Extend with the Berserk head mod, running the Extended Supercharge if you're going to swap out Scrap on the chest. We got Healer Spamming Gem. So you're going to have, plenty of Berserks, and this is just, every Berserk you're getting 1.6 mil from pets, which is turning into 3.1 mil worth of extra Berserk damage on 5 targets, so like AoE damage. And then the Pied Piper artifact is throwing in an extra like 600k on top of that. So here's that the secret Rage Berserk damage. Now everyone knows about it. Now it's all out in the open, so make sure that you're maximizing your rotation each time you use Berserk. So we'll see you in the next video, guys.